this.
So welcome back to Senate Education. Mr. Anderson, 1.1 is the same minus the firearm regulation pieces.
I believe that the firearm pieces are still in 1.1. It was
Okay.
from last week before you had your conversation with Eric Fitzpatrick.
Great. So I'm gonna hold off. We're gonna work right from our decision points and see what direction we can give you. Let's do the least controversial or some of the least controversial first. So we pulled number 3, of course. Senator Weeks, have you had a chance to talk? Have the two of you worked together on diversity language to include religion and political identity?
We did not.
We have not.
Okay, so maybe since we gotta move, you guys could do that,
Yeah.
and we can look at it tomorrow. Back at the top, library, okay, number 2, library consultant positions, 1 at AOE, 2 at the Department of Libraries. The working group only recommended restoring the 1 LP position at AOE. We've heard testimony and we have Catherine here, Ms. Delneo. The bill asks for 1 person at the Agency of Education to work on library issues and 2 at the Department of Libraries. Say something about that, would you?
Well, Catherine Delnell, State Librarian, I did not draft the bill, so I
Right.
think that my understanding of the bill as it was drafted is that with some of the additional work that was initially proposed, that the drafters of the bill thought that there would be a need for positions in the department. With the changes, the way that the bill stands right now, we've integrated a lot of that work into our regular activities, not undergoing rulemaking, for example, but doing some general guidelines. So again, the department's position the whole time has been that we did not ask for these 2 positions in our department. And while my colleague from AOE left the room, I don't believe that AOE asked for that position. And I don't know that AOE's weighed in on it.
Committee, yes.
I think the AOE position really came to us from the VSLA, the Vermont School Libraries Association. And the school librarians across the state who really, really want that position.
Maybe, what do we think? Senator Hewlett, do you recall anything else related to their need for that position?
Anything else, other than what you need, why they feel they
Yeah.
need it?
Yeah.
I think I mentioned last week that a lot of school librarians are living in sort of a little very isolated bubble because they're the only one in the school. Sometimes they're the only half-time one in the school, and they just don't, there's no one for them to collaborate with, no one for them to get information from, and when they don't have a point person in the AOE, I think they feel very sort of isolated and alone. And luckily, there is the Vermont School Libraries Association, which is helpful, but still, that's just a group of librarians. That's not necessarily a body that has any kind of authority or anything. So I think that's where that's coming from.
And we could always put it in, recognizing that anything could happen down the hall, but reality is down the hall is going to ask us, do we believe this is your top priority for the Agency of Education? We're adding a full-time person to literacy. Would our next decision be to add a full-time person to libraries, or would we use it for enforcement issues? Would we use it for other sort of on-the-ground folks to go into schools? One of the things I talked to a couple of reps about yesterday, could we ever get to the point where there's an AOE person in every county? Could we, so schools, so people really have somebody like Fish and Wildlife have people all over the state. It's an on-the-ground job in some way. I don't know if this is where my top priority would be personally. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but there's a lot of need in schools, yeah.
I recognize that. If I can, backpedal just accept for Senator Hewitt's comment. And I know it's different organizations. Why couldn't a school librarian be working with the Department of Libraries? As far as like a, reach out.
Right now, the Department of Libraries has one youth services consultant. And their work encompasses some support for school libraries, but also all of the support for youth librarians at all of the public libraries throughout the state. The needs that were articulated by the working group members were more around curricular support, which is really outside the scope of what the department's usually been providing them with. And we have supported them to a degree, but it's my sense from what we heard in testimony, when the VISLA folks were present at the very beginning of the session, was that they would like additional support and within the agency itself. There is some communication between the department and the agency, but the specific needs of school librarians in Vermont, I can speak to a lot less well than I can speak to the public librarians' needs. For example, our department has been very focused on public library support for statute. And you can see in statute, we're not really as focused towards school libraries.
Yeah, my only other comment, if I may, would be that if there was a way to sort of combine an AOE library position with literacy, and I don't know what that would look like, but it seems like literacy is a priority. We are hoping to add that position to the permanent position to the AOE around literacy, but if this person could, I don't know, manage, I can't begin to sort of think about what that would look like, but it seems like it would be really beneficial to have more literacy focus.
But you're not talking about the position, you're talking in addition to the position you already have in there, right?
Yeah, so like this AOE library position could
Slash.
also have a focus on,
But well, even the other literacy position.
right,
In my former profession, it used to be, they have saying that, safety is everybody's business. But when everybody's looking at it, nobody in particular is. So to have somebody dedicated to, the connection between libraries and literacy, I think it would be worth the money.
Yeah.
It would be a pretty heavy lift for one person, but the idea of one in each county would be ideal. We just don't have the funds.
Well, for that, I was thinking more of, I don't think, I could be wrong, AOE people get into schools like they should. But we know when there's a river overflowing or there's a release of chemicals like fish, everybody's there. Usually, a lot of times these are local people.
Right.
So if the agency did have people that were in every county that were on the ground, hey, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z just to see what's going on. We all saw the news about test scores again coming out. How can we get a sense of and sort of be there to help people? You know what I mean? And not have to travel with mobiles. I just don't think it happens as much. What do you want to say, Archie?
For the one position. I think I do like the sounds of having this sort of merge between the person who's doing literacy and libraries. But there's also the point that it could be a heavy lift for one single person. So I mean, I guess I'm curious as to how much or how heavy would that lift be, and whether it's feasible or if it's, if it would just be challenging but doable. And also to your point earlier on, regarding different positions that we're going to be asking for. Your point's well taken about the other positions as well.
You keep it out for now, the position's out, and then if anybody wants to make a big case for them to go in, happy to do amendments, as a committee, like come in and say, all right, here's some orphan language, I definitely want this person in. Have something, but for now, just to move on, because I know you've got other stuff going on. So. Library record confidentiality, lowering the age from 16 to 12. Who else do people want to hear from on this? I think the majority might be okay with this, but people still want to hear from other people on this. I don't want to shut off debate. Say, this is.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine.
Right. But want to make sure you've heard from the people that you might want to hear from on this. Or not.
Heard from,
Okay.
so I can tell.
Okay. Is there anybody you want to hear from that would make the case to keep it at 16?
Offhand, no.
Okay, if you think of anyone,
I should.
yeah, let me know. Okay, so we'll do it for now, and then we'll might have a little more testimony. So then, of course, 3, dangerous weapons. Library governance, whether to include some language clause that would clarify the level of funding that we discussed. I think this made sense. Can you bring us back to this?
Sure, so to bring you back to that section of the bill, the underlying requirement in law just states that a municipality annually shall appropriate funds for the maintenance, increase, and care. But there was no qualifier around what that appropriation had to be. So in the bill as introduced, there was a standard segment. It was 3 words, insufficient amounts.
Yeah.
And in draft 1.1 of the committee's amendment, that has been taken out and reverted to the underlying law, which just requires an appropriation for the care, maintenance, and increase.
That's the underlying law.
That is current law, yes.
Yeah, because we couldn't determine what's sufficient, what does that, yeah.
Right, okay, now the preceding subsection before that, which concerns the actual establishment of a public library by a municipality, requires appropriations necessary for the construction and maintenance of the library. So that was one of the things that I pointed out, is that you have the necessary standard in the preceding subsection, but nothing for the ongoing appropriations.
Sounds like we're in a good spot with that. We won't go back to the bill draft. Okay, and then appropriations.
Without the positions, it's a matter of whether there should be an appropriation for any duties that the Department of Libraries has under the bill's terms. The bulk of the appropriation was for the positions. And then there was $275,000 to the Department to support the programs and services established by the Act. So with
Repeat that again.
$275,000 for programs and services. Many of those, particularly with a few of the sections pulled out, may not be as relevant.
With the 278, sorry, do you mind?
Please, jump right in.
78.5 included those 3 positions.
The $275,000 was standalone.
Oh,
There was $225,000 to the department for the positions, and then $112,500 to the agency of education. And then that subdivision 1, section 14 was just to support programs and services required by the Act.
sorry, I know you said that twice. What can you guys parse out what programs would be $275,000?
You still there? Can you weigh in on this? Okay, can you?
Okay.
Please, Ms. Stoneham.
Sorry, I can weigh in just to say that the department didn't request this, that we're comfortable with the budget that we proposed that's in the governor's budget request. I did have one area that I had spoken to you about that I'm wondering if you could consider, which was removing an existing piece of statute that is in statute now. I think it's in section 606. It says that the department shall be the primary access point for state information. And we are not that, and I'm wondering if we're touching statute right now, could we remove that kind of old line from maybe 30 years ago?
Repeat it, please.
The department shall be the primary access point for state information. It's part of our other duties and functions of the department, which I think is section 606 of chapter 22. It's
And
the last.
how would this change? What does this?
It wouldn't change our work, but it would not say that we're doing work we're not doing. that makes any sense. The way that this reads, our understanding is that anything that's on the website for the entire state of Vermont, people would look at this and logically think, we had vetted it, we had organized it. No one has come to us for help with their information architecture or the content of the fish and wildlife. Nobody's coming to us for state information in this way, and also with the advent of people calling 211, we're not the primary point of information for telephone calls, email calls to the state of Vermont, or the online information. So I'm happy to still provide advice and counsel in the second half of that sentence about internet state information
What
policy.
page and line are you on?
Well, this wasn't in the bill, but I had asked you about it during my earlier testimony, if we could add repealing that part from statute.
Go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
It's basically just a cleanup because we haven't done this work in
Are we-
many years.
So I apologize, I'm still on the highway moving 75 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Did you say to remove that language from current statute? Okay, gotcha.
Yes, to align with our actual work and to ensure that people don't think the department has vetted all of the information that's on the state's website.
So add language to this bill that would remove language from statute.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, can we do that?
Can I ask, can we go back to the appropriations real quick? So, and correct me if I'm wrong with my understanding, but so on page 10, that section 1 and 2 for the 275 and the 225, those are not in the recommended budget. Is that right? And but the 112 is in the recommended budget.
None of the appropriations listed in this draft of the bill are in the governor's recommended budget,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
And so, okay, well, that clarifies then, so thank you.
And to offer some, can't speak to why this figure was chosen. Can tell you why it was put in here, which is that the working group had originally recommended a series of new programs that the department might initiate at the discretionary level, including things like increasing libraries at the Department of Corrections facilities and things like that. Many of them are not in the bill. So this was a placeholder, so to speak, in case those decisions were made down the line.
So the next draft, we've got, just to make sure we're on the same page, library confidentiality. Number one, it will be lowered in the next draft. Library consultant positions for now, out. Dangerous weapons, we know is they're out. Library governance, we're returning to the original statute. Department authority is Senator Weeks can bring language tomorrow. And then the appropriations. I mean, I guess maybe take them out and we'll add them when we assess what the needs are. So take a look at it. Yeah, please.
Just going back to the library governance, it's already in statute. Why repeat it?
But we're not going to. We're not restricting it, right? Yeah, we're just, yeah.
Yes,
It
and
will
in
be
draft
draft.
1.1, that clause in the bill is introduced, has already been removed. There are technical corrections in those sections.
The original bill had some different language. So
Yes,
we
I remember all
pulled
that.
Yeah, and
So
then we're
we-
just returning to
There
that.
will still be paragraph in the bill
Yes,
regarding governance. And what does it say different from what the statute already says?
in addition to some technical corrections, there are conforming amendments around things like the authority over the library director to make sure that it's
Okay,
consistent.
okay. I'll hear that. I thought it was something.
Yeah, happy to connect.
I thought it was appropriation specific.
Go ahead.
I make a plea or a
Yeah.
request that we leave the AOE position in and let folks make a decision. I love the way Senator Williams described it as someone who would connect literacy to libraries. I just think that was such a good way of putting it, elegant solution.
I just don't want them to make the decision. I want us to make the decision. This is, the policy. I want us to either say this is the biggest priority for us or not. I just don't want to send it down there and be lukewarm at all. You know what I mean? So given the other possibilities, as long as this committee believes that a 50-50 position is more important than any other positions in AOE. I just don't want to send it down and be like, well, we didn't really, but we're gonna leave it to you. You know what I mean? Yeah, please.
Are we going to be having a list of appropriations requests that we're going to be sending down and then
Yeah.
do a prioritization?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay,
So I just don't want us to be,
okay.
I mean, for me, again, I would rather have somebody who just works on math or, but then again, I'm sort of also just grasping, it just
Right,
doesn't. So
right.
if this is the need, if this is a half literacy, half supporting school folks.
I think you and I had talked before on many occasions, doing sort of like an audit of the AOE. It's so hard for me to even
I know,
begin to think about what positions we would add or take away, but mostly add, without knowing exactly who's there doing what.
Mhm.
And I have looked on their page many times, they have like this, they have it looks like a family tree almost of who's doing what, but it's still,
it is a image.
yeah, it's like, yeah, but it doesn't really help me understand exactly who's doing what.
Yeah.
And so to your point, I love the idea of having people locally, but what would that look like? Is that something that, we're not gonna do that
Oh,
this year, are we?
Yeah,
So it's a responsibility if we put in a priority for, number one. Number
listen,
two,
we put it in
it's
the next draft.
it should be, it
And-
should be directed that somebody's gonna be responsible. And specifically what their job is. It's like a position description,
If we put it in and AOE says, well, actually, what we really need is this, that could also give us some information. You mind if we just think about it for now?
Sure.
The next draft, we won't have it in, we'll yank the appropriations for now, and then next draft, we'll have some of these conversations again.
Fantastic. I think I have what I need. Thank you all very much.
Are you available later, like,
Much later in the afternoon, yes. So
morning?
And I'm available. Yes, between 8 and 9 tomorrow. I'll follow up by email, let you know times this afternoon and tomorrow.
Okay, very good.
Thank you all.
Thanks a million, so you'll just send us a new draft,
Statute.
we'll go through it with you, we'll find some time. Great. Tucker, not Tucker, you.
He tells me weeks, so.
Yeah, we're gonna take 15 minutes. We find him some time to take us through the whole thing. Whole deal with all these changes.
We're trying to get it early, or is that too late?
No, we've got superintendent's coming and we've got yeah.
Wishful thinking.
Is Friday too late?
Yeah, okay, yeah, let's do it Thursday, all right, let's go
Thank you.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Catherine, you've been incredibly helpful.
Oh,
We're all-
good.
We're still alive.
Oh, we're live.
I know, right?
That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yay.